Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to today's Grain Market Blast, where, as you know by now, the amazing Angie will be giving you a rapid roundup of the latest pricing, flows, and market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, I'll get the legals out of the way. So, as usual, nothing discussed on the space of session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PLQ Global Limited, trading as PLQ or PLQ Suite, or indeed that of the hosts, which, as I've just said, is the awesome Angie Setzer and myself, Ryan.
Woohoo,
Good.
Ryan, awesome.
Oh,
Ryan, awesome.
stop it. So it
Happy
definitely feels.
Friday.
Well, do you know what? As we said yesterday, it feels like every day this week has been a Friday. So
Oh my
thankfully, it
God.
is
I don't know
actually
if
a
it's been
Friday.
I feel like every day this week's been a Wednesday. Like, you know
Ugh.
what I mean? Like, Wednesday is the blobfish of the days of the week. And
Yeah,
like,
right.
Wednesday, it's just a lineup of several Wednesdays. So,
But
but we
also,
made
I've
it.
got
It's Friday. Yeah.
full disclosure as well. Full disclosure. I'm actually sat in my favourite haunt in London, drinking a very nice bottle of Malbec, um,
Nice.
and a nice cigar. So yeah, it's just
I
and then you come along,
understood. Yeah, I
and
understood
you
one
come
of
along,
five
you
of those
brighten my
words.
day.
Yay! We head into the weekend and we're ready to party. I am anyway.
Exactly that.
It's too early though for partying here, so you go ahead and
I'll do it
have
for you. I do
some.
it all for
Yeah,
you. I do it
do
all
it
for
for
you.
me. I appreciate it. I do. So, all right, are we ready to rumble
Go.
as we head into Friday? I hope you heard that in the wrestling voice because that's what I
Yeah,
meant it
are
in.
you ready to?
Yeah, I can't do it, so it's embarrassing. So yeah, but anyway, are you ready to rumble? Because here we are. I'm not really even sure what's tariffed or not anymore. Basically, I don't think anyone is at this point. In the nicest way, right? So yesterday we had, or to Wednesday, going back, we had that whole entire update with we were going to go ahead and exempt auto manufacturers from the
Yeah.
tariffs at least until the first part of April there. And then at the start of the day yesterday or mid morning, whatever, I was just getting ready to go on stage to kind of update a room full of 300 farmers on what was going on. And I'm like updating Twitter as quickly as possible so I could try to at least seem like I knew what the situation was. But now it appears like we have Trump has decided that we're going to continue to follow the USMCA, right, which will cover approximately 50% of Mexico and Canada's imports that we bring in or whatever. So there's a small amount of imports, or around half, that'll be covered on what's coming in. And then there's like 40%, give or take, that we traditionally would trade duty free, right? That is apparently subject to the tariff, maybe. And so we're trying to work through what that all means and what that looks like. We did see a carve out, right, for Canadian potash, and a couple other things like energy. Some Canadian energy was reduced on our
So
side, and you
just
know, yeah,
potash is like basic fertilizer. Well, a
yes,
constituent. Right. I'm
yes,
learning.
it's a
As
fertilizer.
we
Look at
say,
you go,
every
yeah, and
day
it's
a school day.
and it's beautiful because it's potash. You'll like we Carl and I were talking about it yesterday while we were heading back home, where you'll have people say potash. Potash or whatever, and you're like,
Potash.
oh man, I'm also a phonetic pronouncer. So, but yeah, so we've kind of carved out some this, that, and the other thing. Canada's going to go ahead and keep their first tranche. I like saying that word and spelling it.
Tranche.
Tranche. It makes me feel
Tranche.
fancy. Now it's tranche in French. And anyway, they're gonna go ahead and keep that first chunk of tariffs in place. And they may go ahead and they're going to keep the second one kind of in the holster for now. It might come on April 2nd. It might not. It really will depend on, what the US decides to do with reciprocal tariffs and things like that.
Yeah.
And so Mexico's president just said, this is literally coming across the Twitter sphere right now, if we don't put tariffs on what's coming from the US won't put tariffs on what's coming from Mexico. So I don't know what that means. It's a riddle. Go ahead and figure it out. You're going to try to cross
Answers
the
on a
bridge.
postcard, please.
That's just it. Please let me know what you think it means because I am clueless. So yeah, I mean, really, right now, I think we're getting a little bit of trade headline fatigue, and I think to a certain extent, we're going to kind of recognize, yes, there is some concern. If Canada tariffs ethanol and some of these other things, it could become Interesting. It could further pressure ethanol margins here in the US because Canada is our largest customer when it comes to ethanol shipments. And so there's some things that could kind of reverberate through the industry that we have to pay attention to. But at the same time, we have other factors at hand that are probably going to start to take the attention of the market here sooner rather than later. And that leads me to point two. Look at that segue. That is South American cash markets.
Smooth.
I know it's almost like I know what I'm doing. I pretend really well. But we got South American cash markets and a really, odd sort of explosion in soybean basis, and the corn basis is not odd. The explosion in corn basis is not odd, but the one in soybeans is. We're over halfway done with harvest. You should, by this point in time, see the most pressure on basis that you would see throughout the entire year. Once you hit that 50%, trying to put that last a third to a quarter of a crop away is generally, likened to torture in the elevator business, because you really are trying to put stuff into places you don't know where to put it. And so oddly, right now we're seeing some strengthening in values. Now, Eduardo and I are going to talk at the bottom of the hour about what the hell is going on, and he's going to explain it to me like I'm five. I asked him to bring crayons. But, when it comes down to it, there's a
See, this is
couple.
this is how I feel every show.
You're like, I'm writing it down. I can picture you with your tongue out the corner of your mouth, like scribbling
Wow,
feverishly.
wow.
It's okay. It's nice. It's okay. It's not a bad thing.
Thanks,
But
thanks.
anyway, we're looking at some really sharp increases in values, like 50 cents a bushel on the week. And a lot of that is just kind of showing you the problems that we have with logistics. And one of the things that I've always argued, and will until the cows come home, is what makes the analysis by people who have actually traded physical grain different is that they understand that, yes, it looks like this on paper, but there are 77 ways that it's going to go wrong. And so right now, Brazil's had the 77 ways. I think they're on 76 of 77. We had a weather delay to planting. We had a harvest delay because of poor, heavy rain and all of these things. You've got logistical issues. And now you've got a couple different ports, one in Argentina that our friend Nico pointed out this morning.
Yep.
That's a big corn exporter or corn port that could become problematic. But then the one in Brazil that came down is probably going to be out until June. And that's really going to limit their ability to export beans, into the cash market. Now, that doesn't mean that China is going to come back to us. But at this point in time, if you're a bean buyer in the world and you had sat back and waited for Brazil, which should be puking supplies into the market as cheaply as possible right now, if you had waited for them to do that, you're kind of hosed. You're sitting there and you're wondering where you're going to go next. And that's where our friends at the US come in. And so we'll have to be watching and paying attention to what's taking place here, because what it says on paper and what is happening in the physical market are two different things. That doesn't mean that the beans aren't in Brazil. It just means that they're having a hard time getting out. So you always really struggle to refill a pipeline. It takes far longer than anyone had ever envisioned. And this also has a huge spillover effect when it comes to Brazil's potential to export corn. At this point in time, Brazil, even if they produce a hellacious safrinha crop, they are not
Good
going to
word.
be able to put it. I know, I like it. Put it into the world market really until we get to August-ish. You know what I mean? And so the U.S. becomes continues to be the supplier that the world goes to for corn, and the world is going to still need corn. So it's going to be interesting to see if we continue to have these million metric ton weeks. The USDA cannot much longer sandbag this export idea, because we are shipping what we have sold and some of these other things. So we're just going to be paying attention to what is happening in the cash market, in the physical market, because, as I said before, just because it says that, hey, Brazil's got 170 million metric tons of soybeans on paper, and they probably do. They obviously, they have around that level, give or take, doesn't mean that they're going to be able to shove all 106 million metric tons of expected exports out on the front end. And so it does become problematic for new crops. We've got to keep that in mind. It's going to be one of those things that, you could see a reduction in the export outlook months from now. But we've got to get some confirmations on things before that takes place. Last point, as we head into Friday, maybe last point. There's like two of the last points. They're side by side.
What
So
we did yesterday was we had that encore
the
for you. So
encore
yeah, so
point,
so,
yes.
so
So
this is the last.
everyone's
This is the last point, but
yeah.
I'll call
This
for
is
an encore.
exactly, yeah. Everyone, get your lighters out, hold them up, and I will give you one more song. But the second to last point, I guess we'll say, is we are working to figure out what the hell is happening with the freight fee, the port fees. We talked about
Right.
this
Yep.
several several different times over the last couple of weeks. President Trump has put together an executive order. Reuters did say that they saw the draft yesterday, though sorry, Reuters, anyone that's listening from Reuters, I'm always like, little grain of salt. Is this our trial balloon or the real thing that we've been
Yeah,
given to the
exactly.
Reuters staff from the inside of the White House there? But, they are saying that the fees proposed, or the fee proposal, is in the executive order, but there are no dollars outlined, no
Right.
real kind of rules there.
And
And they removed the secondary fee too, right? That one that was super confusing, where if you had boats on order or
that was
whatever, it was an additional one.
exactly what I was going to ask. So just and forgive me if I'm wrong, and please correct me. But so as it stands, and I think this is a crucial point. It's not just Chinese companies with ships that go. It's basically you could be any fleet based anywhere in the world and like be owned by anyone. But
Yes.
if your ships were made in China, you get
Yes.
penalised, and it
That's
depends
the
on
problem.
how many of your ships were made in China out of your percentage of your whole fleet dictated
Yes.
how much. So it's yeah, good luck enforcing it, and yeah,
Yeah, it's
think
going to
just
be very difficult, I think. But the
is there
fact
a
that
way to get long like shipping lawyers or something like that?
I think so. I would get along like the French shipping company that announced like $8 billion in U.S. investments or something like that. Maybe that one's like, I don't know. I
There
have
you
no
go.
idea. That
No
wasn't a
trading
wreck by
advice. No
any
trading
means.
advice.
Yeah. I have no freaking clue. If you buy that on this, you're dumb. But it's okay.
Yeah,
Have
right.
at it. Like you're dumb in a good way. We like you. Don't I don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
alienate
Thanks for
anyone.
tuning in.
Yes, exactly. But anyway, it was going to be one of those things that we're going to watch. The good part is it's not this $1 million, like, so let's see what it says and what we've got, because I
Yeah,
do feel like cooler heads, smarter heads will prevail and will recognize that, hey, we can't do this. We're going to completely hamstring our bulk commodity exports.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
that's not something you want to do when you're trying to, make America great again. So
yeah. Right.
that feels good, feels a little bit better, though I would like some additional confirmation that we're not going to I can't say what it's going to say, but anyway, not going to get host. And then
The
last
family
point,
show.
right, is Russia and Ukraine. And we're just going to continue to watch that. Apparently now, one of the more recent pushes that we're seeing from the administration, and part of the reason that you heard that the mineral deal is going to be signed Tuesday and it wasn't signed on Tuesday, is that they meet in Saudi Arabia, Ukrainian officials and officials from the U.S. And there is talk that Trump is really kind of pushing this sort of peace, ceasefire, truce sort of deal. And so that's been the pushback. I don't really know the exact details, or I don't want to speak out of turn when talking about the exact details. But it'll be interesting to see exactly what takes place here when they meet on Monday, whether
Yeah,
it falls apart or not. We saw Russia launch a pretty aggressive attack overnight, where it was like dozens of missiles, hundreds of drones, fake and real. And one of the things that we've heard is the biggest implications that we'll see from a lack of U.S. intelligence sharing with Ukraine and a lack of military aid will be their Ukraine's air defense. It'll create
right.
holes in their air defense. And so that opens the door to a continuation of critical infrastructure being struck.
Yeah,
Last night it was energy and gas. And so we've just got to continue to watch all of that and what's taking place, because it could have some pretty big implications as we
yeah,
move forward. But overall, that'll just be more of a geopolitical alignment. Is the West going to stay together, or are they going to, create two separate bands? I guess we'll see. But yeah, otherwise, just giddy up. It's Friday. I'm going to guess that no one's going to aggressively pile into this market with all of the headline bomb
well,
risk that you
this is
have
it.
going into a weekend.
As we know by now, not only is there just the normal headline risk, but obviously you got the weekend gap
Oh
headline risk
God,
as well.
yeah.
It's like yeah,
There's so much. Yeah.
it's like yeah,
So
good luck.
yeah, I would not. If it were me, I think I would stay home for the day. You know what I mean? So I'm going to guess a lot of folks are going to do the same thing.
Yeah,
If but I'm also me and they're them. So I don't know. But yeah, that's about it. We'll see what happens. We'll maybe know more on Monday. And yeah, now Trump's strongly considering banking sanctions on Russia. So it's going to be a fun weekend with lots of things happening.
awesome. Well, Angie, thank you so much for just being your usual awesome self. Not just today, but every day. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, especially our regular ones. We really appreciate you tuning in and listening to Angie and me, just hopefully providing some comedy relief occasionally.
That's
But have a
and
great
intelligent
weekend.
insight.
Oh, stop it. Have a great weekend, everyone. Whatever you're doing, please stay safe, keep it tight, and we'll